Alright, so stop whining and start complaining. Or as I like to call it, a guide on how to stop being a little baby. So, my sophomore year of high school, I took a class that I had heard a lot of horror stories about. Algebra 2 honors. The upperclassmen I was friends with had told me a lot of horror stories about this class. They told me I wasn't going to pass, the teacher's horrible, the class is way too hard, and you know what? I didn't believe a word of it. I walked into that class with my head held high until that first quiz we took. I got it back, and I had gotten a 37%. And the rest of my class had followed suit with similarly poor grades. And what was the first thing we did? We complained. We complained a lot. We complained we were never taught this. We hate this teacher. This class sucks. We're going to drop. We're going to fail. And then we went home and cried and stuff. Now this complaining, as fun as it was to be a part of, was the wrong way to complain. Now that being said, what is the right way? But to answer that, we have to define complaining, and then we can get into how to complain right and why it matters. So, what is complaining? The dictionary defines it as the expression of annoyance or dissatisfaction with something, but it's a little bit more complicated. There are 3 subdivisions of complaining according to psychology today. The first kind is called chronic complaining. This is usually what people think of when they hear the word complain. People who chronically complain are the complainers, the crybabies, the whiners of the world. Everybody knows somebody like this, and if you don't think you do, then it is you. I, for one, know that it at least was me, or at least the rest of my class, when we took Algebra 2 honors. Chronic complainers find a way to complain about anything and everything that isn't exactly as they want it. And this kind of complaining is a very negative kind of complaining, as it rewires your brain to constantly complain, putting yourself into a negative feedback loop where you only see and take in the negatives of the world. The next kind of complaining is at least what I call neutral complaining. The most obvious example of this would be the human response to pain of ouch or ow. This kind of complaining can also be called venting, when we just let out whatever is bothering us about a situation. When we get cut off in traffic, our immediate reaction is, oh, come on, man. We fail a test, our immediate reaction is, oh, that sucks. And when our favorite sports team loses the big game, we shout at our TVs in frustration. This kind of complaining is a fairly neutral and very common kind of complaining. Now, the third kind of complaining is what psychology today refers to as instrumental complaining. It is a model of how to complain correctly, whereas the other 2 kinds of complaining serve only to express dissatisfaction. This kind of complaining is a means to an end. This kind of complaining is recognizing what's wrong with the situation and voicing an opinion that can fix that situation. For example, if a teacher, say, hasn't put in a grade that for a homework assignment that you submitted 2 months ago, so you respectfully go and talk to them, and then they put it in and it bumps your grade up to a 90%, that's instrumental complaining. That definitely did not just happen today. This kind of complaining is the most effective and useful kind of complaining, albeit very rare. But luckily you guys are here, so I'm going to teach you how to do this. So, how do we complain correctly? Well, it's very simple. You avoid chronic complaining, and you stick only to instrumental complaining. So, how do you avoid chronic complaining? Well, it's easier said than done, really, but it's all about repetition and your mindset. To avoid chronic complaining, rather than only complaining about a situation that you aren't exactly satisfied with, think instead about how to rectify the situation. And to use instrumental complaining, do exactly that. Think of how to rectify the situation that is at hand. Say you step outside and it's cold. Rather than complaining the entire day about how cold it is, step back inside and grab your sweatshirt before going out. So, why does any of this matter? Well, as I said before, chronic complaining rewires your brain to constantly complain. Constantly complaining puts your mind into a negative feedback loop where it only takes in and looks for the negatives of life. Instrumental complaining, however, rewires your brain to think solutions. It ingrains in your brain solution-oriented thinking. When you only think of problems, your problems will continue to pile up and will eventually overwhelm you. But when you think of solutions, your problems begin to disappear thanks to the solutions that you come up with. And that's why it matters. It mattered to me that my sophomore year of Algebra 2. When I was taking Algebra 2, those first few weeks, all I did was chronically complain. I complained about the teacher, how she wasn't teaching me properly, how the tests weren't at all what she was covering, how the class was awful. But it wasn't until I took a step back and recognized that the problem was not the class, the problem was me, that I managed to get out of that situation. I used instrumental complaining to recognize that the problem with that class was not the class itself but me. I wasn't putting the proper effort in. And once I recognized that, I was able to put that effort in, and my grades rose steadily because of it. And that's what switching up how you complain can do for you. It can dig you out of holes that get dug by chronic complaining. It can rewire your brain to think of solutions rather than problems, and most importantly of all, it makes you a lot less annoying to be around. Thank you.